Deputy Mayor Penner and Council, thank you very much for inviting me here today. Our Commission values our strong working relationship that we have with you, and we really appreciate these opportunities to share information and collaborate on public safety in our city. For anyone listening today that's unfamiliar with us, our Commission is appointed by both City Council and the province to provide independent oversight and governance in Calgary's police. For the past 90 years, we've maintained an arm's-length relationship between the Calgary Police Service and the political bodies by overseeing CPS's priorities, policies, finances, and the Chief on behalf of Calgarians. Next slide, please. Actually, yes, I think I need to go to slide 3. Thanks. Our Commission and CPS publish a fulsome annual report each year, but I want to briefly highlight some of the key governance accomplishments from 2023. The past year involved a significant learning curve for the majority of our commissioners, as 7 of 12 were appointed within the last 18 months. Welcoming so many new people has provided great new perspectives, but it's also required a lot of time and attention to onboard and train new members. Our Commission also focused heavily on modernizing our operations. We moved to a new right-sized office space that reduced our leasing costs and provided a better workspace for our staff. The office move also allowed us to invest in technology that has improved our live streaming and ability to facilitate remote participation in meetings from the public. With the support of City Admin and Council, we also modernized the Calgary Police Commission bylaw, which had not been substantively updated since 1997. Following the bylaw update, we've now turned our focus to modernizing our Commission's internal policies and procedures. Next slide, please. As part of police governance, we decided to extend the contract of Chief Neufeld until 2027. When Chief Neufeld started, he was the 5th police chief in 5 years. He was hired to be a change agent, but very quickly was required to manage the extraordinary impacts of the pandemic and the 2020 spotlight on systemic racism. Given the tumultuous nature of the past several years at CPS, we wanted to ensure a stable relationship for the next few years so the important reform work underway can continue. At Council's request, our Commission also formalized 12 key performance indicators that we and you together can use to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of the CPS. Next slide, please. Coming out of the pandemic, our Commission decided to reinvent the community dinners that we used to hold annually. We now present our awards at the Service's annual Chiefs Awards Gala and hold a separate consultation event. The first Calgary Policing Summit was held in September as a one-day conference that over 400 Calgarians, like nonprofit organizations, community associations, and yourselves, were invited to attend. Participants learned about policing in our city and provided input into our policing priorities. To better align the event with Service's planning cycle, the next summit will be held in May 2025 and then annually. And finally, our Commission and the Service continue to both implement the anti-racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion reforms promised in 2020 and change the way people in crisis are supported. This included increasing the healthcare and addiction support available to people in custody, which is work that was largely funded through a provincial grant. Next slide, please. Looking at 2024, our Commission has 6 key focuses. We'll continue to fulfill our legislative responsibilities and deliver on the police reforms that Calgarians have requested. Advocacy with the province will continue to be a priority as they update the regulations for Alberta's police and work to establish a new agency to handle all police conduct complaints. Our focus on updating our own operations also continues as we support Council's strategic direction to modernize governance and strengthen relationships with Calgarians. And finally, significant work has been done in the past few years to improve the workplace at CPS, but it's time to evaluate whether these efforts have had the desired impact. Our Commission has committed to hiring a third party to evaluate the efforts to date, identify any remaining gaps, and set a path for the next phase of work to ensure all employees have a safe, respectful, and inclusive workplace. And the last slide, please. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We're first going to go to Councillor Walcott.
I always find myself in the queue first with you. First question, thank you for being here. The commissions across Alberta, not all of them show up to these meetings, so I appreciate you for that one. Too soon, maybe, but still. Actually, I wanted to touch on that subject not in a specific way with regards to what happened in Edmonton, but more of an actual relational way, because I'm really the KPIs that the commission has come up with, and the relationships that I think this Calgary City Council and Calgary Police Commission have come together with regards to efficient and effective policing, I think is like the start of a model, right? Like that is like the back and forth relationship with regards to the legislation. And so I was wondering if you could comment kind of like, now that you're a year in to the KPIs, how that is evolving, or how that is going for you in your ongoing commission work leading up until next year's police plan.
I think it is a good model. It's and new. We are so we use the KPIs as the highest level in the overall strategy, so we can communicate outwardly with everyone more simply than we would normally. The overall police service evaluation still has many pages and many goals, objectives, and all of the measures that we have in there. So we still work through those on a regular basis, because that's important for the commission to understand that level of detail. And so we're in the process over now and then through September to look at how those lined up with KPI. Do the KPIs still make sense? Are they still written the right way? Do they still provide us that lens? So it is still a work in progress. We still have all the information in the background that we work through. That also continues to be published, so that you can find those reports if you want them on the website. But we still are finding the KPIs useful at this point to talk externally and make it a little bit more simple. So they'll be evaluated, yes, as we go along.
Awesome, thank you. Heather was terrified I was going to ask you to comment on Edmonton. I promise you I wasn't going there. The follow-up question I had for you, of course, was, it's partial gratitude, partial question. And the one gratitude is I think it might have been almost a year ago now, you released an op-ed talking about police reforms with regards to regulations alongside the Police Act. And you mentioned that there's the third-party external body is currently being spooled up by the province, but has there been much discussion, and of course you don't have to tell me what the discussion was because that would be confidential, but has there been much movement or discussion on the regulations itself since that early advocacy?
Different parts are moving ahead at different speeds. Right now, the focus is looking at what needs to be in place to stand up the third-party review of policing complaints. And so everything from what's that going to look like, how is it going to be defined, and then as they go forward, we need to sort out what the funding looks like, because they aren't going to do everything. So we need to have some of that support within the CPS as well. So there is engagement going on, and certainly I know that I've signed up for 2 webinars next week to be part of an engagement conversation. So yes, the engagement's going on, and it's heavier in some places than others, I think, in terms of the overall set of regulations they're looking at, and we'll have to see how the other ones come forward.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
Councillor Pootmans.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for your service. Much appreciated. I recognize the enormous commitment of time and energy it takes. So kudos to you and your team. A couple of points. I'm just trying to check out the slide bullet. You mentioned in your slide deck that there was a turnover, a fairly significant turnover in board commissioner membership. Mm-hmm. What is the tenure of, or the term of an appointed commissioner?
The provincial appointees are appointed for 3 years. I don't know how many times they can be reappointed, but they're for 3 years. The city commissioners are appointed for 2 years, which can be renewed for up to 4 terms. That's slightly different between the provincial and the city appointees.
Is it worthwhile considering whether a longer term might lead to a little less turnover, perhaps?
Yes, it could. And we ran into an interesting situation last year where we had a full complement, then the provincial ones came in, and then we had to adjust how things went. So we had 3 new people who didn't have any, so our turnover might have looked a little different had we not had 3 appointees from the province, but that's just a fact, and we've gotten over it. I will say that going forward, and this is maybe a bit of something to take away for the fall, is that what we're looking forward coming up to the fall appointees is that we really would like to have some Indigenous representation back on commission. That would be very important, I think, for us to include and make sure that we are as representative as we can be. And then we also need the high-level expert financial acumen that needs to come along with a commission like this.
Thank you. And to the summit, great news that the summit's now scheduled for 2025. Mm-hmm. And I think you had about 400 people last time we were at one, which was such a huge success for the community as well as, I think, the service. Any thoughts of expanding it, scaling it up a bit further, or is 400 a sweet spot for you?
I think, I'm looking over at Corwin there, I think we don't want to get it too huge. We were very careful in terms of making sure there was enough people and enough conversation that was available for people throughout the day. So we went to community associations and asked them to be represented and various other of our non-profit organizations that we work with over time. So we'll have to look at that. It could be scaled up. Again, we need to manage it with the little bit of staff we have and the volunteers we've got.
I asked that question with a bit of caution because I know everybody really appreciate the access to the senior officers and yourself, that if you expanded it exponentially would be diminished to a certain degree. So I suppose there's a balance that you're seeking. I would vote for a little bigger.
Okay, thank you.
For what it's
Appreciate
worth.
that. We'll take that away. Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dollywall.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair, and the team. Good to see you again. I want to understand what kind of community outreach are the commission members doing? I don't know, town halls, meet and greet. Because at least I can speak for my ward. 96% of people are not even aware of what commission does, and often they call us and we tell them commission is the place. And I remember when I was on the commission, there was discussion about doing more of that outreach so people understand, and also relationship building. I just want to understand if there's any proper process in place, how often they're doing it, is there a plan?
Yes, we have been working on making sure that commission members interact and engage with the community as often as they can. So everything from the summit, which was a very large effort, and all of the commissioners were there for the full day interacting with all of the people who had been invited. We also managed to get out to the invitations that we see that we can get to that are in the community, whatever ward or district it might be in, and different commissioners will go to the ones that are connected most with them. Commissioners also make sure that they do a ride-along at least once a year, or a couple have been several times a year, go out with the school resource officers. And then the other big piece that's been worked on over the last year is with social media. So between LinkedIn and Twitter, no, we don't do we do Twitter? Yes. Facebook, but not Facebook. So anyhow, we have these debates about how much can we do, but again, it's resources, and are they the effective way of getting out? And so Corwin helps us out to truly evaluate which of the social media platforms we can manage and have the impact that we want it to impact. So whether it's demographics or whatever it might be. So there's lots of work going on, and again, trying to get ourselves out into community. It's resourcing a little bit too.
No, I can tell you, like ELT, they've been very active in my ward and very responsive, and we had few meetings about different issues, so want to applaud them for doing that. Great relationship there. You probably heard ARAC was here. Mm-hmm. There was a letter sent out by MCC about 4 or 5 months ago when that big event happened in front of the city hall, where situation got escalated. A woman's hijab was removed. A 12-year-old kid, I believe, was pinned down. And MCC kind of said, this is the worst relationship we ever had with the police. 60 years of relationship building has come down crumbling. Can you comment on that, what we are doing as a commission to make sure that we rebuild that relationship? because situation is very tense right now in a way.
What I can say is that we have that conversation with the service every meeting. In our meetings offline with the chief, we have an anti-racism committee that meets once a month. That's a focus of. And that topic of conversation is very high on the list of conversations that we have. The work that they are doing is extensive in terms of using their community mobilizers and their relationship teams, whichever group it is. There's, I think, 9 or 10 of them. So all of those are still fully in action, and they both the commission and the service understand that there's a lot of work to be done, and those things are difficult situations and really require attention, which is being paid.
I had to sit down with MCC, Muslim Council of Calgary, and they kind of said that in this whole conflict, CPS is being biased. Can you, if people who are listening, can you maybe comment on that?
I don't think I can go too far down that road. Certainly, there's the university protests that are still being evaluated by ACERT. We've had a report on those. I mean, protests, we have a major event protest policy that's influenced by all of the other major events like G20 years ago and the other ones. So that policy was updated last year to make sure that we had learned what we needed to learn. The learning is ongoing in terms of what's done at each of these situations and how it's handled, and the conversation after action kind of reviews comes back to commission, and questions and discussions are held each time to see what may have gone wrong, what did go wrong, what needs to be done, and how they build that. So that's from a governance perspective what commission does, and then we expect the service to go and do their work and come back and report. So that cycle is ongoing.
What is the relationship that commission directs between ELT and rank and file? I don't know, I should say this, but I heard there's a disconnect in a way that rank and file feel they're exhausted. They do lots of work, but they're not getting ELT applauding in a way or reaching out and making that sit down for a coffee or something. Yeah, I just want to, if you can comment on that.
We do an employee engagement survey that the commission undertakes each year to understand what the engagement levels are with the employees. The current one is out right now, and so we'll get that information back in the fall. Last year, we saw a very slight uptick in the engagement scores, so it's a question as to whether or not those are continuing. So that is our main avenue of information, is the survey and then the work that they do afterwards. There's other work that's going on with employee engagement that's based on the results of each of those surveys, and so we get updates on that on a regular basis as well.
Okay, no, great. I just want to conclude by saying thank you. I just had a drive with Mr. Ahmed Shaheen out of District 5. It was a night time. We started at 7, finished at 1, then we sat down for what they call lunch at midnight, 6 other offices. It was amazing. So just want to thank that. I had Superintendent O'Brien reach out to me about dashboard on domestic violence, because District 5 has disproportionately high domestic violence. So I just want to say there's good relationship building happening, and ELT and District 5 officers are very, very supportive. So thank you so much to you and the service.
Great, thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Dhaliwal. Councillor Meehan.
Thanks so much for being here, and I want to say thanks for the report as well. I got it in my mailbox a few weeks ago, and it's really great to read, and I think they get better and better every year. I really feel that. Going back a few years and reading the annual reports and then seeing them now, like there's such an evolution of information and the way it's presented that I think is very helpful, and I look forward to sharing with my community. So thank you. I guess I have a couple questions. One, also the other compliment I want to give is I've really noticed the difference in the presence of commission on social media and on the different places. And so I hope that endeavor goes well, because I know as someone who tries to communicate on many different channels, it's a lot to manage and can be hard to be done well. But I really wish you well in that. I think one question is in the annual updates, I see the work you're doing on these various strategic areas like anti-racism. I know that there was an anti-racism report, of what you were going to do back in 2020. It's on your website. And then I see it reflected in your annual policing report plans back. But would there ever be another report back very specifically about, okay, that was 4 years ago now, these are all the progress we've made within those 4 years, and not just sort of annual updates?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think that that's something that we need to do, and I want to just link that back to one of the things that we have on the plate for this coming year is around the workplace culture review, and that one is very specifically designed to look at the last 5 to 10 years, what's been done, and it'll be pretty high level, but it will also really try and tie together what's been done, what worked, didn't work, what the gaps are, and then the best ideas to go forward. So to take a specific, what I'm hearing is an anti-racism lens in that format in terms of the last 4 years is a good idea. I think that there is some of that in the CPS report, but again, it would probably be hard to find. So yeah, we can take that away and see if that's something we can do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a suggestion because I think it is such a strategic area. I mean, even we heard that reflected to us from other groups of this is a big area of concern. And I think when you are making progress in a certain area, but it's reported through different ways, being able to say this is our big report back that summarizes the bulk of the work might be a good idea. The other question, I saw that there is some improvement in employee morale. I remember when I first was on council a few years ago, that was the big part of the conversation was how low employee morale was. And so can you just speak a little bit more to those improvements, how that's linked to the efforts you make, how much you think employee morale is actually maybe linked to things beyond even the control, more sort of macro things. So do you have any comments on that?
I think there are the very specific work that's been done over the last couple of years around morale. Certainly health and wellness has been a huge push. That was last year and the year before. And so there is great appreciation for the supports that are available to our employees within the service. So that's a huge area, and I think that that's one place that's really improved. The executive also has spent, that is the senior leadership, has spent more effort getting out and making sure those things are connected. And so I think that's another piece that's positive. As to external, I don't know that I can say that there's a lot of external influences that would cause an uptick, because there are still a lot of issues that the officers deal with day in, day out, whether it be, protests or anti-racism committees and feedback and things like that. So I'm not sure there's a lot from external that's pushing that, but there has been a lot of work done internally to try and work on that morale, and it's still going on. They call it the Pathways to Engagement is their plan, and they started very specifically. The first year was, everybody sent in ideas, and there were 500 of them, and they actually worked through all 500 ideas as to how they could be incorporated, and they've moved on so that it's a little bit more systemic and larger pieces that are being promoted. That was the Pathways this past year, and then we'll see what comes out in September in terms of other areas to focus on.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last question is, I saw that you have a report about community perceptions of CPS and of policing in Calgary, which is, and all about trust and what breaks trust, what makes trust better, what is people's willingness to restore trust. I find that report super interesting. I think actually our council in many ways struggles with a lot of those same things of how do you reinstill trust in people. And so if I was on commission, I probably would know a little bit more about that report and kind of what the plans are for it. But is there anything you want to say about that report and sort of future plans for how to navigate that very tricky relationship?
Yeah, it's an ongoing effort, And trying to tackle trust is about engaging with community, listening to the stories, hearing what they're saying, and also trying to have a dialogue that's two-way as opposed to one-way. So those sorts of things are linked into our communication and engagement plans. We continue to survey the community on a regular basis because we need to hear, so we have contracted with Illumina again to do that deep dive into the expectations of community and their level of trust again this year. So all of those things continue as we go. So back to that word around trust. Trust is a huge, big thing. And so between engagement, communication, even the community policing day and things like that, those are all parts that we're trying to work on to build that trust.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here. And thanks for answering my
Add
question.
one more thing to
Oh,
that.
sure.
We are also working to make sure that we're still connected to council. And so whether it's the briefing notes or appearing for other, whether it's committees or just ad hoc things, we're continuing to keep that really high on our list too. So it's
And
council as well.
thank you for that. I will say the briefing notes are exceptionally helpful, especially when they're in response to very timely events that are happening in the community, to just understand Commission's perspective. And so just want to say thank you. And back to you, Chair.
Thanks. Councillor Chabot.
Thank you, Chair Cornett, for being here. And first of all, I want to say I've seen a lot more presence of, I think it's called the diversity units in my community things. And I'm just curious, have you guys increased the complement of the diversity team?
I know that they did increase that over this past year. I don't know how much was 23 or 24, but yes, there's been a real focus on the diversity teams.
Yeah, well, it's been visible and appreciated from the community and the different events that I go to, the different cultural events. I always see a representative there. And it's not always the same person, which leads me to believe that there's some more people in that unit. So thanks for that. Recently, I got engaged with the SCAN folks, the Safe Communities and Neighborhoods, the Sheriff's Department, and through my engagement with them and with the community to try and find a solution to some of the challenges within the community, and trying to provide my input based on what I heard from my constituents. They said, "Listen, you know what? It's third-hand information coming from you. We would rather hear directly from the residents," and some of those residents, of course, sometimes are afraid to come forward. But again, what's the best mechanism for folks to engage with the police department to bring forward issues that may not be as confrontational as going to a police commission, and the 266-1234 doesn't really provide an opportunity for a feedback loop. So is there something that may be considered as far as engaging with the police, providing input, and then getting some sort of a response back on lessons learned, or what we heard, or this is the outcome of some of the input that we received?
Yeah.
Sorry, kind of a long, drawn-out question there, but
Yeah, it's, and I'll answer from my perspective at a higher level governance, because the organization is so complex with so many people or pieces. There are a number of different ways, and maybe we need to make sure we've got a better way of explaining those. But there's the community relations officers in each of the areas. There are usually constables that are attached to the school. So if it's a school or a young people kind of issue, that would be a way of accessing an individual specifically. There's the diversity resource teams also at the different events, and those kind of conversations can be very helpful. There's the 1234 number. The district offices, generally speaking, if you go in, you can talk to somebody at the desk, and they can help you figure out in that area which district or which person or how they might, what level the issue or concern might be addressed at. So that might be some way of doing that. Requires in person, but the district offices always have somebody at their desk. And I know there are some people who say that they don't pay attention well enough. And, if you're out there on a Friday or Saturday night, it's going to be pretty busy because there's a lot going on outside. But, during the middle of the day, that might be easier, which is difficult for people, I understand. So there's lots of different avenues for that feedback and conversation. But what I'm hearing is that we're not making sure that people know those avenues are as available to them as they may be.
if I may say, I've not, in the last several years, many of my community folks had indicated that they had concerns with the community resource officers as far as their participation. That's been improved dramatically in the last little bit, and thanks for that. But I think there's an ongoing need to continue to ensure that those resources are available, and to let council know if there's additional, resources that you require to be able to meet those needs in the community, specifically as it relates to community resource officers, because they have proved to be very valuable, at least from my perspective. It's just the continuity hasn't always been there.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for everything, the report, great report, and thanks for everything you do.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today.